Hi there. Welcome to this interactive session on how to drive customer engagement with Marketo nurtures. Today we would be discussing nurturing, which is a well-known strategy, insights from over 20 detailed Marketo audits that we conducted for various customers, cost of not nurturing, and illustrations from pragmatic examples of nurture programs. Now before we start, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Karan and I work as a senior Marketo consultant. I have been with Grizzly for the past 2 years. I'm working alongside Balkar and I would just like Balkar to have a quick introduction for himself. So hey Balkar.
Hi Karan. Yeah, so I lead a team of 20 plus certified Marketo experts here at Grizzly. And I and Karan have been working on various nurture programs and Marketo programs and helped a lot of our customers deploy different kind of programs in Marketo. So, but in this case, like I give it to you, Karan, to introduce the agenda of this slides and agenda of this webinar.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Balkar. So, just to summarize again, we have worked together on several nurture projects and engagement programs that involve complicated logics, and we are glad to share our insights with you and help you explore the full potential of effective nurture programs. So to kick off, let's start with discussing nurturing as a well-known strategy. And Balkar, please feel free to add in your valuable comments anytime.
Sure.
Great. So first of all, I would like to focus on a very valuable part of any nurture or engagement program, and that is content. So content makes consumers 131% more likely to buy. But the surprising part is content alone is not enough to drive successful engagement. What we have seen is nurtured leads produce an average of 20% increase in opportunities for sales versus non-nurtured leads. Now that is a huge number to explore, ain't it, Balkar?
Yep, I definitely agree on that. And to take on the point you made regarding content not being alone, I think that's really insightful thing to have. Like, just not content, I would just like to add to the point you made. Nurture strategies alone aren't enough. It's also a content distribution strategy. So we can think of nurture strategies as a content distribution strategies. That is something which does the justice to content itself. So not just content alone, but we do need a nurture strategy as well to distribute that. And by using Marketo, we can't just deploy a nurture program. We are also, have the options of segmentations and dynamic content, wherein we can have the right messages sent to the right people at the right times.
Absolutely. And adding to that, we have also seen that lead nurturing emails generate an 8% click-through ratio compared to general email sends, which is which usually just generates a 3% click-through ratio. So yeah, like you absolutely said it, Balkar. It's all in there. But then the surprising part is that despite the fact that nurture programs are so effective, they really are not utilized by many marketeers. In fact, I have worked along with Balkar on auditing over 25 Marketo instances in the past few months. And one common factor that we found in most of these instances on a quite consistent basis is that there is a significant number of inactive leads in these instances. Now that's a very troubling fact because this clearly shows that there is very minimal lead nurturing activities going on here. On one hand, we know that there are various marketing activities to consider like email blasts, webinars, road shows, etc. And on the other hand, there are a bunch of leads that are just lying in the instance without being explored.
And just to add to that point, yes, definitely, as we saw in the audits, there's a significant percentage of inactive leads, and using an engagement program, or I would say overall a nurture strategy, is a good way to automate an engagement. So at least you keep pushing the leads across the funnel by various touch points, so they are not inactive. They have got the chances to get the emails. So when they have that, they have chances to open and ultimately engage with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that exactly is how the database is utilized to its full potential, right? And so coming to the next slide, now that we have seen that nurture and engagements are not fully utilized to their full capabilities, let's take a short note or a short moment to address its full possible consequences.
Right. So you just mentioned that we have seen that nurture programs are not fully utilized, but I would say that it's not like that they are not utilized. It's like either we have a lot of people using them to the fullest, or we don't have people using it. So it's really about a barrier or maybe something holding them to start that, and I'll definitely talk about that later in my slides as well, but I do have those assumptions with me as well. There's a different interface in engagement program. However, like not not using nurturing or not having an engagement program, if we look at it on an overall perspective, Marketo is overall a marketing automation platform which is ultimately about nurturing the leads, and it's not just the engagement program, but there's a huge cost if we miss out on nurturing.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the reason I want to focus on these few pointers a little more, because by not nurturing or by not utilizing engagement programs to its full potential, the first and foremost, the first impact that it actually has is the something called opportunity costs.
You bring up a great point of opportunity cost. Let me just add to that as well. So it's really like whenever you are nurturing a lead or whenever you are pushing content to a lead, you're also creating an opportunity for that lead to be converted into a customer. But if you're not doing that, you lose that opportunity. So it's not really very virtual to say that, but yeah. So that's really one cost, which is just having a nurture program send content on regular interval of times would do a lot of brand management for you, a lot of there will be a memory, the customers may
because your brand is registered in their subconscious, so that plays a huge factor.
Right, I agree on that. Absolutely.
Great. And so that is the first and foremost point. And now if we just talk in terms of marketing alone, just having content is not enough. Like I mentioned earlier, the content has to be distributed to the right channels at the right time using engagement programs. So this will help your leads in the initial stages of their lead life cycles to find the right content and eventually get to a point where they can be called engaged. And coming to the third point, finally, if you talk in terms of brand reputation cost, what happens when you do not nurture inactive leads? Your competitors sitting somewhere are using this as an opportunity to possibly engage with those leads and eventually convert them. So you are basically losing out on those. So what do you think on that?
I think that's perfect. Yeah. So definitely brand reputation is something which is at stake here, and that's the cost of not nurturing, definitely. And really, there are setups in Marketo which can help you automate the distribution of your content.
Right.
And the more valuable your content is, and the more it helps your customers, the more they are engaged. And it's not just about content, coming back like third time to that same point. But that's really,
that's an important point, because you make a compelling case over here. So absolutely. So now that we have discussed the possible consequences of not using nurture and engagement programs, let's dive into how to utilize nurture programs and discuss the working of both nurture and engagement programs with some pragmatic illustrations. Shall we?
Yeah, sure. I'll definitely be glad to take that part. And before I start, I'll just summarize whatever we discussed up till now. So there's a cost of not nurturing. There's an insight from we saw that insight for real in our own audits, that there are inactive leads, and you have the functionality, you have purchased Marketo, you have the functionality, but you are not doing it right. You have the database, but they are inactive. All it takes is content and a program handler set up to push the content, and that just if you set it up once, it will definitely touch your customers. It will definitely push them across the funnel, and the more they are MQL, and that's the higher chance of conversion over there. So really, that's the importance of nurturing. And I think we have said enough on that. And we can I'll just talk about the key elements in here, the key features which we have in here, and I have some videos in here which will illustrate basically the very important I would say features of engagement program. And if we have a complex setup, how we can do some complex and custom logics built in drip nurture. So really I'll be focusing on very specific example. There's a lot more which can be done with combination of whatever I am going to be discussing right now. But this will be you can think it of as a foundation to think upon or build upon, and it should give you a solid and cohesive perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So, talking of examples of nurture programs, which Bilkar is going to be illustrating in the coming slides, to start off with, programs that require complex logics can be created by drip nurture programs, in which leads can be categorized into top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and bottom of the funnel. And on the contrary, programs that require relatively simple logics can be created using standard engagement programs. So Bilkar, can you please show us how these programs work and maybe show us an illustration to better understand it?
Sure. Let's jump to next slide. And we just talked about drip nurture campaigns to conclude, and there's one more. We can have the onboarding nurture as well if you are selling your trials or products.
Oh, yeah.
There, like, we talked a lot about pros and cons. We talked about tofu, mofu, and bofu just now, and I just jumped to the engagement program functionality here.
Right.
So if you can see in here, I have an engagement program set up for sending an email. So here in what I am doing is I have added a filter member of engagement program, and in the flow I'm pushing that email via that smart campaign. So if you can see, like, I have the send email step in the flow, and in the smart list what I had was member of engagement program. So what this does is member of engagement program filter makes the smart campaign available to be run as a batch in the Cadence, which I'll be discussing later. So this is the actual campaign which sends the email when you set it up.
Right. And Bilkar, just a quick question here. I noticed in the smart list that you have used a filter for email address contains gravity. I understand this is for testing purposes, but in order to enlighten our audience, could you kindly shed some light on it and
yeah, definitely
a few comments on that?
So here's what we do. So if we can see in here, we have a send email, and then in the smart list, as you mentioned, we have an email address contains gravity. This is because this is right now in testing. I have not activated this program.
Okay.
So this is really, I use a couple of test records to test these other scenarios. And because I don't want an actual lead to pass through this program in an accident, I restrict it just for the test lead. So the email address contain @gravity that ensure that even if something by chance hits this, that will be blocked from sending that email. So I have ensured that until I am live with this, I ensure that there's no actual lead flowing through.
So no matter what, the original leads in the database would not receive it by mistake or any sort of steps that we do not do properly by this testing step.
Exactly. However, I would also make a point in here. This is just for engagement program. In here I have used this, but I will be discussing a bit about testing later as well. But this is the key. This is really important because the example I have taken in here is in terms of nested programs.
Right.
And this is the campaign which we have to build within nested programs, and this is the campaign which actually runs when the content is sent, when the email is sent. And to continue, I'll jump to next slide. So before we send the content, we need that content to be activated. So to do that, I simply need to drag that nested program over to a stream, as I'm just doing it in the screen, and I have to select that smart campaign which I just talked about.
Right.
From that gear icon, I can activate it. And this, what this does is this makes the content available to be sent. We can not just drag and drop a nested standard program. We can also add a webinar or events program within that. We can add an email as well into that. So there are different ways we can add content to the streams.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's important to note that this is not a lead right now. There's not a lead in this program. It's an entity, it's something, it's an object in engagement program which is available to be sent. So it's ready, it's eligible. So content is there. So now we can say that, okay, now we have the content.
Right.
It can be sent. But how to send that? When to send that?
Right.
So that's another concern.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is an interesting slide. Actually, I would suggest to play it once again for our viewers so that it's helpful to see the illustration in detail once again.
Yeah, sure. So if you notice, I'll be dragging this email program to the stream and then selecting the program, so that program email too, which we can see in here. And within that there's a smart campaign, which I talked about in the previous slide, and it's sending the email actually, and from the gear icon we can activate the content. So that's how you activate the content. So activating the content means the content is eligible to be sent.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you for that, Bilkar.
Yeah. And after we have activated the content, the next part is when to send that content. For that we have this option over here which we call Cadence.
Okay.
Right? And you can understand it as terms of frequency, like when you want to send that. So this is the window which we have after we click that, and you can have it every 3 weeks, 2 weeks. You can set the first cast. The first cast is basically the first event when you want to send the email. You can have it weekly or monthly, and you can define the time. Let's time it at 8 a.m. PDT.
Right.
So in this particular example, just to explain, the first email would be sent on the first cast, right, at 8:30 a.m. PDT.
Okay.
And 2 weeks later, the next email would be sent at the same time at 8:30 a.m. PDT. So it's really the combination which we define at Cadence.
Right.
So now the content is not just available; it is being sent on those dates.
Right.
May or not be. It may be a possibility, like it doesn't require a lead to be in it. That's an important aspect of this program as well. So it's not like you need a lead to have in here. So you can think of it like every Tuesday at 8 a.m. PDT, every 2 weeks, the content keeps on flowing. The email is sent.
Right.
Regardless of the fact that there's a lead in there or not.
Right, and I think the simpler we keep this setup, the more value we'll be able to add by working on more content rather than working on deploying these setups. It's interesting to see that we come across instances where marketing still relies on traditional drip nurtures, ain't it?
Right, but I think that is for good reasons, and I am more of an operations guy. But you are right. This is a lot simpler setup for an engagement program, and instead of using a traditional nurture program. However, since it has been a new interface, so it is a new interface. If you can see, like it's not a smart campaign directly. It's not requesting things, right? It's not a standard program. The standard program are actually the nested program within that. And that is another entirely different functionality which is only available in this program. And however, like I have an assumption that maybe the people are not really very comfortable of using this setup or using this interface readily, and for good reasons, because we always have to test, we always have to see the opinion, we always have to get the reviews, and we don't want to mess up with our leads, right? So we need to be very clear on like what this engagement program will do, and there's a lot of discussion in community regarding this program as well. I think it's similar to adapting a new technology, which takes a while. And however, like we are already, we have seen example of people deploying this as well, versus the insights which we share.
Completely ignoring it, and absolutely. And I think marketing always has a challenge of time and resources. But if this becomes a practice for content distribution, this type of engagement program can save a lot of time. It's really a well thought design. You talked about cadence and activating content. So let's talk about options to add leads to a program as well.
Sure. So to describe it in a simple manner, I would say we have a simple flow step of add to engagement program that explains it. I would just for fun, let's play a next video to illustrate. So in here you can see here is a campaign is requested, smart campaign, which I have in here. So the trigger is campaign is requested. And in the flow, I have a flow step of add to engagement program. So you have a out of box default flow step to push lead to that particular engagement program. So remember we had those two nested program in the stream with that cadence. So whenever lead is pushed to that, so like that content is available to be sent, but when we push a lead to that stream, so that lead will be sent. The first email on first Tuesday, 2 weeks later the second email on the second Tuesday. So really all we need to do is activate a setup in that program and push leads which we want to nurture.
Oh, okay. This is simple. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was complicated, but yeah, it's actually simple. And as you know, we have always been in situations when we need a bit of complicated setup as well, because these nurtures, which aren't really simple.
Okay, I get it. I definitely get it. You mean the recent examples wherein we deployed a couple of nurtures which were having complex logics. For example, in case like you want to check for a condition before you send the email. Check for a condition. Maybe you want to wait another couple of Just to clarify, I'll just want to have an example over here.
Right.
And before that, I really want to talk about a very important aspect of engagement program. I already talked about it, but let's use an analogy.
Right.
What does Karan comes to your mind when I say streams?
Well, a stream of water, I guess.
Yeah. So it's very simple. Anyone you ask, like stream actually means a narrow stream of water, right?
Right.
However, like these are named accordingly. So these blue lines, if you see over there, you can have an analogy that the content is flowing in this stream.
Right.
So that is available. So regardless of the leads in here or not, it's like a river of content. It's like a narrow stream of content. The emails are flowing. It's only like you can push the lead in that, and that will be delivered the content.
Oh,
so
okay.
Really, that's really like, so in this particular example, we already talked a lot about that.
Right.
But I actually use this as an analogy, and this is really a very helpful analogy to understand how it actually works. Someone would also say, like, if we have it activated, what does sends that email, right? If I have that send email within that nested program,
right?
How does it operates? How the emails are sent? So it's really like you set up an automatic structure of flowing content, and later from outside of that structure, you push the lead into that structure, which we call engagement program, and they get sent the email as per the cadence you define and the content. So you can just drag and drop the content and forget about the structure or the logic. So that's simple. Every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, or maybe every 1 week, or maybe twice a week, right? So you can define quite a lot of flexibility, but yes, very simply. And you can simply push the lead, and it's very powerful. I really like this engagement program a lot. I'm actually a fan of this, and it's really a very thoughtful, as you mentioned, structured, and it's very thoughtful program because it solves a huge administrative challenge of marketing, which is time.
Right. So basically, we have some restrictions and limitations in these programs when we have to deploy very custom logics.
Yeah. So thanks. Yeah, you came to the point, right? I was about to come to there. So let's take an example, right? So the example I'm going to take is this flowchart here. I'm not going to explain that. That's boring. But just to have a high-level insight, I want to send the next email only if the opportunity of a lead was updated. Else, I want to wait another 7 days. How do we do that? It's not clearly very much possible in engagement program.
Yeah.
You can see, like, now we're talking.
Right.
And to do that, we rely on the traditional approaches, I would say. And here's the traditional approach. So I typically use a requested campaign sequence. So this campaign in here, which I see over here, it's adding the lead to a dummy engagement program, sending the program, waiting for a couple of days, and requesting another campaign which basically checks whether the lead has clicked in a previous email or not. So this is the flow I have in this particular campaign, I would say. So really it's about so I break it in a couple of different things. So in this part, so this first campaign I have here, what it is doing, it's simply adding it to a dummy engagement program, sending the email, waiting a couple of days, and then pushing it to a separate campaign.
Right. Yeah, that was very insightful, and thanks for that. And now that we are done with this, let's talk about some approaches we can deploy, where we can deploy a nurture program with custom rules and which aren't directly feasible in an engagement program.
Exactly. So this is that's really what I want to discuss here as well. So this may be very much possible. To wait 7 days is feasible in an engagement program, but to check before sending the next email, that's not really possible.
Right.
And it's also very much assumed for like that, like it's very genuine to assume in that case that if my lead is not qualified for the first email sent in an engagement program, then it can be sent the next email. However, there's a catch in here. When we have a restriction in the nested program we talked about recently, that restriction does restrict the lead from being sent the first email. That does not mean that the next email is sent instead of that email. So the email 2 is not sent instead of email 1. So email 1, the event to send email 1 is missed. There's an additional wait of 7 days or whatever cadence you have defined. So the lead actually misses on the cadence.
Right. So, this isn't a traditional engagement program.
No, it's about the engagement program we have talked about. So in traditional we can actually solve that logic.
Right.
So in this case, for example, we have that added to dummy engagement program. So this is just because I want to track on overall like what members do we have. It has no functionality in here. You can have a smart list. You can have a static list here as well. And just for fun, we have taken an engagement program, and it's really about. And I typically remove a lead from these dummy engagement programs within these custom projects as well. So just to play this video once again, to get into the flow. So this is the campaign where I have the smart list, where I have the campaign is requested. So this is where I will be pushing the lead when I have to add that lead to this custom logic. And then I add to a dummy engagement program, then I send them the email, then I wait 7 days, and then I check for whether the lead has clicked on that particular email last 7 days or not. And after that, what my check is doing really is it's really so this is the campaign which checks. It's referencing. It's actually referencing a separate set of smart lists where I have defined the criteria of the leads who have clicked. So like if you can see, like if they are member of a smart list where I have defined they have clicked the email, I send them the next email. If not, I push them into a separate campaign, which actually is doing is it's separate campaign is waiting for additional 7 days. So really by having a requested campaign setup and different flows in requested campaigns. So as you can see, you have like a 7 days wait in here, and it's sending the 7 email to. You can have a very complicated nurture build by these setups as well.
Complicated, and relatively it's a lot flexible also. I mean, you can twist and turn it as per your requirement.
It's very flexible, I would say, but it's not really recommended unless you have a very
complicated
logic and a convincing reason to use that.
I totally agree on that.
I would not want to use this complicated logic because it's really time consuming, and testing it is quite exhaustive. We come across various scenarios, as you already know.
We have worked on it, and the testing checklist itself, it's a huge list. So unless the what Bulkar is trying to say is, unless the logic is very complicated and unless it actually requires, we generally should use the
engagement program, and that type is actually more scalable, more simpler, and it will actually save you a lot of time to produce content, and you can achieve a lot more via the engagement program instead of the traditional trip nurture. However, like if you have very strong reasons to use a very complicated and very custom logic, you can use these requested campaigns to do that. This can have a processing time issue if you push a bulk of database into that. However, for triggers, for generic triggers and push leads, generic leads, as and when they happen, I have not faced a lot of processing time issue in this, but yes, I have definitely faced a processing time issue in requested campaigns if I push a bulk of database. So I typically use that a bulk of database push to these type of campaigns on weekends, and that's really on not really about
so that the other programs aren't impacted that much.
It's not really like about the request itself. That's a separate discussion over here. I will not go deep into it, but just a point. That's not really about sending them. It can be about lead scoring. It can be about lead routing in a different way. So a series of requested campaigns are generally slower if you pull a bulk of database. So I think I covered a bit of so this covers quite a lot of perspectives into traditional drip nurture and engagement programs. And we talked about activating content, we talked about sending emails, we talked about setting up the cadence, we talked about adding the leads to engagement program, and then in traditional nurtures we talked about how we can use a setup of sequence of requested campaigns and how we can reference different smart lists to take decision on the flow steps. So I think these all elements, or these all strategies, I would say, can give our audiences a really cohesive and solid perspective to decide on how do they go about it and how they can use it. I hope our users enjoyed it, and I definitely I would like, if you have questions, please reach us out, send us the comments, and with this I give it to Karan. And Karan, if you like to add more, please feel free.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that was no, but Karan, I think you covered it pretty much, everything, and thanks a lot for that wonderful illustration. That was really very insightful and valuable. So to conclude this webinar, I would prompt all of you who are watching this webinar to utilize engagement and nurture programs to its best. Additionally, I would also like to add that at Graziti, we have worked with several clients in creating simple as well as complicated logics to channelize relevant content at the right time and eventually help them utilize most of their database to get maximum number of marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads. To more on how we can help you make the most of your lead database and get the maximum number of marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads, drop a note or comment at info@graziti.com. So thanks again, and stay tuned for our next webinar on the best and effective utilization of Marketo features. Thank you.